Okay, so you go online, maybe just for 5 minutes, or you sit down with family, holidays, whatever, and you just feel it, right? This sense that political, social, cultural polarization is maybe the challenge right now.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like we're just talking past each other.
Or worse, we're just not talking at all, just avoiding it.
Yeah, total avoidance.
So the big question is, how do you actually sit down with someone, could be anyone, a relative, friend, colleague, someone whose beliefs you really fundamentally disagree with, and have a real conversation, one that doesn't just, blow up or leave everyone feeling resentful?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? For the 21st century, really, we've got all this information flying around, but somehow we're just sinking deeper into disagreement.
And the systems we use every day, social media, our news feeds, they almost seem built to make it worse, right? To amplify the fight, not the connection.
They really do seem engineered for confrontation.
Exactly. So to try and get around that division, today we're doing a deep dive. We're looking into the key lessons and, honestly, the very practical toolkit from Mónica Guzmán's book. It's called I Never Thought of It That Way: How to Have Fearlessly Curious Conversations in Dangerously Divided Times.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book.
Excellent.
And it really flips the script on how we usually think about conflict. It argues the way forward isn't about winning debates. It's not even really about debate.
So what is it then?
It's curiosity.
Curiosity. Okay, let's unpack that. Because Guzmán, she comes at this not like purely from theory, right? She's a journalist. And this feels important. She's the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and she's managed these huge political divides within her own family. Like, she stays close with her parents, who are conservative. They vote completely differently, but they still have a real relationship. They talk.
And that personal experience, that's really the bedrock of the book's credibility, I think. She knows these divides aren't just abstract ideas. They're painful. They're real. She's not asking you to become some kind of detached guru. She's giving actual techniques, mental habits you can practice.
Right. Habits to help you stay in those tough conversations long enough to actually learn something, to get an insight.
Exactly. To get to that moment, the one in the title.
I never thought of it that way.
That's the goal. That's the reward she talks about. It's that click, that moment when your own defensiveness drops just for a second and you genuinely understand something new. You stop trying so hard to win the argument.
And start trying to actually see how they see it.
Yeah, see the world from their perspective, even if you don't agree with the view. She calls that phrase a kind of neurological event. It means just for that instant, you let information in instead of just protecting your own view.
Which, okay, that leads right into the core idea, curiosity as the bridge. So what's the big shift the book asks us to make right off the bat?
The fundamental point is this. Curiosity is the opposite of judgment.
The opposite, okay.
That distinction changes everything. Because if you walk into a conversation already judging, that inner voice saying, they're wrong, they're ignorant, how could they possibly think that?
Which is, let's be honest, often our default setting.
It absolutely is. But if you start there, the conversation's basically dead on arrival. Judgment puts up a wall. It forces the other person onto the defensive. And when they're defensive, they're definitely not going to share the real reasons behind their belief.
Okay, so instead of that knee-jerk judgment, you consciously try to replace it with genuine curiosity. Like, why do they actually believe this? What happens then?
Well, then you start digging. You begin to uncover what's really driving them. You get past the slogan, the talking point, and you start to see the foundation beneath it, the personal stories maybe, the core values they hold, or the fears that are shaping how they see the issue.
So their politics might be tied to a fear about, losing stability, or a deep-seated value about personal freedom, or something from their childhood.
Exactly. Things you'd never guess from the surface argument.
That feels like a huge shift in focus. Usually if someone says something we disagree with, our first instinct is, okay, counterattack, here are the facts proving you wrong. But this book says, hold off on the fact war for a second. Focus on the person.
Pretty much, yeah. The core lesson is that curiosity is actually stronger than judgment because it has this disarming effect. And the goal shifts too. It's not necessarily to change their mind by the end of the chat.
Right.
The goal is to broaden your own understanding, to see the complexity you just uncovered. If you can see what they value, you can see them as a person, not just an opponent.
And, as you kind of hinted, trying to widen your own perspective feels, maybe more achievable than trying to flip someone's entire political identity over appetizers.
It definitely guarantees a different kind of success. You walk away with more clarity, even if you didn't change anything else.
Okay, this is where it gets super practical, I think, because Guzman doesn't just say, be curious. She points out specific things we do, habits we fall into, that actively make things worse. She calls them the SOS behaviors. Things that deepen the divide, make us more hostile. We need to know these so we can stop doing them.
Yeah, these 3 habits, they really act like a kind of psychological trap. They narrow our world, keep us stuck in our own views. They basically fuel polarization by keeping us isolated.
Okay, let's break them down. What's the first S, and how does that show up day to day?
The first S is sorting. Sorting, it's that tendency, which feels really comfortable, honestly, to surround ourselves only with people and information that agree with us.
The echo chamber.
Yeah, exactly, the classic echo chamber. But it's not just online algorithms. It's choosing where you live, who your friends are, what news you consume, all based on finding agreement.
So if I only read news sources that confirm what I already think, or only follow people online who echo my views, that's sorting.
Yep. And the danger is, pretty soon, any view that doesn't fit starts to sound not just wrong, but completely alien. Maybe even crazy.
Which leads right into the O, I'm guessing.
Precisely. The O, which often comes right after sorting, is othering. And this one is, well, it's pretty damaging emotionally. Othering is when you start labeling people who disagree not just as wrong, but as bad, or maybe evil, or fundamentally ignorant, or morally flawed.
So it's moving from, I think your idea is mistaken, to I think you as a person are defective.
Yes. It's a way of dismissing them entirely, isn't it? Instead of grappling with their argument, you just label them idiot, bigot, sheep. Once you slap on that label, you've basically given yourself permission to stop listening. You've dismissed their humanity. And once you do that, well, real conversation is impossible.
No bridge can be built then. And the final S, the sort of ultimate step in cutting ties.
That's siloing. Siloing, this is the active choice, and often it's a painful one, to just cut off communication completely.
Unfriending, blocking, deciding not to invite someone over anymore.
Right. Saying things like, I just can't talk about politics with them anymore. Or, I'm done with anyone who voted that way. Polarization absolutely thrives on this kind of isolation. Siloing just removes any chance for that curiosity bridge to even be attempted.
Wow. It's actually kind of depressing when you lay it out like that. Sorting our world, othering the people outside it, and then siloing ourselves off. That really is the engine of division, isn't it?
It is. And the antidote, she argues, is actively pushing back against these tendencies. It means choosing engagement, choosing openness, choosing proximity, even when it's uncomfortable.
So, okay, if we manage to fight those SOS urges, we keep the communication line open, that's step 1. But then what? What do we actually do or say when we're in that conversation, in the hot seat?
Right. And that brings us to the practical toolkit. This is the real how-to part for anyone who's just tired of those draining, going nowhere arguments.
Let's get right into the actions. What's the absolute #1 tool she emphasizes?
It sounds simple, deceptively so. Ask open-ended questions. But the key is, what kind of open-ended question? You're not fishing for more debating points. You're trying to understand their internal world, their reasoning.
Okay, give us some concrete examples from the book. What do these questions sound like?
But the gold standard question, the one designed to get a story, is, what's behind that belief for you? Or, another great one, help me understand when you first felt that position was right for you. Or even, what worries you most about that issue? Or, what would need to change for you to feel differently?
Those are different. They force the person to tell you something personal, right? Not just repeat a slogan.
Exactly. You're asking them to show you their thinking, their journey to that belief.
So if I ask what's behind your view on, I don't know, climate change, you're more likely to talk about your connection to nature, or maybe your job, or your kid's future, rather than just citing some study I can argue with.
Precisely. You're asking for the why behind the what. And that leads directly into the second technique. This one's maybe the hardest mental shift. Listen to learn, not to respond.
Oof, yeah. That is incredibly hard. Because the moment someone says something I disagree with, especially if it feels inflammatory, my brain just lights up. It starts building the counter-argument immediately. I'm planning my brilliant takedown while they're still mid-sentence.
We all do it. It's a natural defensive reaction. But you have to consciously switch tracks. Remind yourself, my goal right now isn't to prove them wrong. My goal is to understand why they're saying this. You shift your inner monologue from, how do I debunk this, to what experiences or values led them here. It takes real focus, deliberate focus on their perspective. If you catch yourself mentally rehearsing your next line, you've stopped learning.
That takes serious self-control. especially when the topic hits a nerve, when it triggers a strong emotion in you.
Which is exactly why the third technique is crucial. Notice your emotional triggers. When that discomfort flares up, and it definitely will in these conversations, the key is to practice pausing. Just pause.
Don't just react.
Don't react instantly. In that pause, that's where curiosity can step back in. Acknowledge the feeling, wow, that made me angry, or that scared me. Take a breath, and then instead of lashing out, try to ask another curious question.
So maybe someone uses a word, a label for a group that you find really offensive. The trigger goes off. Instead of shouting back, you pause, notice the anger, and maybe ask, that's an interesting word choice. Why do you use that particular term?
Exactly. You're choosing curiosity over escalating the conflict. And the last piece of advice ties it all together. Assume complexity.
Assume complexity. What does that mean on the ground?
It means actively reminding yourself that people are rarely as simple as their sound bites, their views, their motivations. They're usually layered, maybe even contradictory sometimes, and they're almost always connected to personal stuff you know nothing about. By assuming complexity, you're refusing to fall back into fissure with them, othering them, refusing to just slap a stereotype on them. You're committing to digging, believing there's more there than meets the eye.
Okay, so those 4 things together. Ask those open-ended why questions. Really listen to learn, not just reload. Notice when you get triggered and pause. And assume the person is more complex than they first appear. It feels like doing that consistently would have a huge effect. You're basically disarming their defensiveness by showing you genuinely want to understand, not just attack.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
You can't build any kind of bridge. You certainly can't influence anyone if your only goal is to win that specific conversation.
Which brings us to sort of the bigger payoff for doing this hard work, right? Guzmán frames this whole approach as needing courage.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The courage to ask tough questions, yes, but also the courage to just stay in uncomfortable moments when every instinct is screaming, run away or fight back.
Okay, but we have to hit this point clearly, because I think a big fear people have is that doing this, being curious, being empathetic, it means you're somehow endorsing bad ideas. Does empathy mean you have to agree with views you find harmful, or just plain wrong?
No, absolutely not. And the book is very clear on this. This is maybe the most critical distinction. Empathy doesn't mean agreement. You can work hard to understand the path someone took, the experiences, the fears, the logic, however flawed you think it is, to arrive at their current position without ever saying, and therefore that position is correct.
You don't have to give up your own values or your own truth.
Not at all. But the act of truly hearing them, of maybe reflecting back what you understood without adding judgment. So it sounds like you're worried about X because of Y. That act itself can build enough trust to change the whole dynamic. It can turn that feeling of being enemies into something potentially productive.
And zooming out even further, she makes the case that understanding has to come before influence, right? You just can't persuade someone or correct misinformation effectively, or even just connect meaningfully if you refuse to see their basic humanity first.
That really is a core leadership insight, isn't it? We tend to think influence comes from having the best arguments or the loudest voice, but often the people who actually make the biggest difference in their families, communities, workplaces, they're the ones who make others feel genuinely seen and heard.
Listening is a leadership skill, huh?
It really is, because it builds the trust that everything else depends on.
Okay, so that brings this really powerful deep dive toward a close. The big takeaway seems to be, if we want to navigate these divided times, we need to consciously shift, move from that instant judgment to deliberate curiosity. We need to spot those SOS habits in ourselves, sorting, othering, siloing, and actively work against them. And then use those specific open-ended questions not to win, but to genuinely understand the values and stories behind someone else's views. The goal is insight, not victory.
Exactly. And Guzmán's book does a great job of making these pretty complex communication ideas feel doable, accessible, but it definitely doesn't pretend it's easy. It demands humility, it demands patience, and those are tough sells in our current, very fast, often very loud environment.
Sure.
But the really fascinating insight, I think, the thing that makes it worth the effort, is that this kind of curious dialogue doesn't mean abandoning truth or ignoring accountability. It just makes the possibility of a real exchange happen in the first place.
Right. So given that maybe real dialogue, productive dialogue, only really begins when we stop seeing disagreement purely as a threat, we want to leave you with a question to think about. Consider those 3 SOS behaviors we talked about: sorting, othering, and siloing. Which one of those might you be able to make a small commitment to reversing, maybe starting today, in your own conversations?